yes, there's danger, but I see huge opportunity. I mean, the situation we're facing now is the result in part of failed deterrence on our part. You know, we did nothing after the Syrians and the Russians jumped over President Obama's red line 10 years ago. And for the last 10 years, U.S. strategy has been tolerance of Assad, hyper focus on ISIS, but really not much else, and only providing humanitarian aid to the opposition versus real meaningful help. And then the support that we gave to the YPG, which is a branch of the terrorist organization PKK, has really damaged our relationship with our strategic NATO ally, Turkey. So I think if we look at what America's interests are, contrary to what the incoming president said, that we should just stay out and stand by, we have serious interests here. Number one, we do not want Russian or Iranian influence to continue inside Syria. We don't want Syria to be a transit for weapons from Iran to Hezbollah. We don't want Syria to be a place that can export terrorism. And there are more than 3 million Syrian refugees, mostly in Turkey, but also in other countries in Europe, that want to come home and need to come home. And we want to facilitate that. And then finally, of course, Syria being a peaceful neighbor with Israel. So we have to be involved. And now seems to me the right time to start moving in the direction towards those interests.
Well, the postmortem here is pretty remarkable, General, when it comes to strategic errors, the mistakes that Vladimir Putin made specifically that led to this, the oversights, the errors, arguably, strategically, that Iran made that brought us to this point. President Biden spoke about this just a bit when he was addressing the nation yesterday. As an expert in military strategy, speak to the losses that Vladimir Putin brought to his own front step.
Well, you know, the Russians are actually in big trouble in a lot of places right now. And this is, again, opportunity where if we're thinking in a proactive, strategic way, we could damage Russia so badly right now that it could help improve security in the transatlantic area as well as the Middle East for decades to come. Russia is overextended. You know, they've had this Navy base in Tartus now, I think, for something like 50 years. That's been their foothold in the Mediterranean. But then they go to war against Ukraine, which was unprovoked, unnecessary, but they did that. And they have taken such a beating inside Ukraine that they found themselves overstretched. They literally did not have anything meaningful that they could use that could help Assad. And now it looks like possibly, and Courtney's correct, we don't know for sure, but it seems very possible that they will lose their Navy foothold in Tartus and the air base that's near Latakia. That would really be a blow when they don't have these kind of bases anymore. They become much less of a player in the Eastern Mediterranean.
So, General, you don't see any opportunity here, or to your point on their limited resources and the fact that Russia finds itself overstretched, for them to try to reinstall Assad or protect him in a more material way than just offering him safe harbor for the time being?
Well, you know, when the Russians, they don't care about international law. They don't care about how many innocent people get killed. So I would be reluctant to say that they'll never try anything. But I mean, that would they would really have to show up with a lot of force to reinstall Assad back into power. Anywhere other than perhaps if there ends up being some sort of an Alawite statelet on the coast, you know, perhaps they could stick him back in there. But I don't know that the various forces that have overthrown the Assad regime, if they can ever organize themselves, and of course there's so many different factions, it's not like one big homogeneous movement, but if they could organize themselves, they could probably prevent that from happening. And again, this is why the United States needs to be proactive. Now is the chance to get rid of Russian and Iranian influence in this region.
Well, with that said, General, how does this inform Vladimir Putin's hand at the negotiating table in Ukraine, presuming he'll be at one soon. We saw images over the weekend with Donald Trump, Emmanuel Macron, and President Zelensky meeting together in Paris. And we know that the incoming president has hopes of drawing this to a close. But after what we just saw take place in Syria, does this actually weaken Putin's hand in Ukraine?
Yes, it does. A great point. I think that the most important thing is not drawing the war to a close. The most important thing is protecting our strategic interests and defending those things that we say are so important to us around the world: sovereignty, respect for international law, freedom of navigation, respect for human rights. These are the things that matter to us in the Indo-Pacific. And so the Chinese are watching to see if the United States, if we don't have the political will to help Ukraine defeat Russia, after 11 years of war, with Russia having every advantage, they still only control 18% of Ukraine, and they've lost 700,000 killed and wounded soldiers. Their defense industry is in tatters. And that's without us actually really even trying to help Ukraine win. So instead of starting off the negotiations with Ukraine will have to lose territory, Ukraine will have to accept not joining NATO, why aren't we flipping that around and look at the trouble that the Kremlin is in? They've lost Syria. Their puppet in Tbilisi in Georgia, the Georgia Dream Party, is under enormous pressure from Georgian people who want nothing to do with this return to Russian domination. The election in Romania has been thrown out by the Romanian Supreme Court because they saw such enormous Russian interference in the election. So I think the incoming president, if he really is this master deal maker, he has all the leverage in his advantage.
Well, and it's not just about President Trump, but also those he surrounds himself with in his next administration, sir, including his nominee for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. There's still a question as to whether or not he will be confirmed. But with this number of hot conflicts ongoing in the world, do you see him as equipped and qualified to lead the DoD?
Well, of course not. Look, just keep in mind that what's happening in the Middle East right now is only one of several huge strategic problems that the United States and our allies face. We have China that we've already talked about. We have Ukraine, Russia, and Europe that we're talking about. And we're not even talking about Africa or South America. So you need a Secretary of Defense. And by the way, you also need a Director of National Intelligence that has the experience, the trust of allies and partners, the ability to muster all of our capabilities to properly analyze and deal with each of these scenarios. And I can't believe that the Senate will forfeit its constitutional role and rubber stamp these nominations. I can't believe that they think this is the best the Republican Party can do to fill these two critical agencies or departments. And, when the nominee for Secretary of Defense says kill all Muslims, that's going to be a problem when he's dealing with our Turkish allies or trying to work with our allies and partners in the Middle East. And not to mention that there are tens of thousands of Muslim soldiers in the United States military. And of course, his problem with women serving in combat is also a real problem for me. I mean, my God, we have thousands of women that perform important combat duties, aircraft, infantry, submarines. This is not the Second World War where you had a front line and rear area. The whole place is combat. And so he has not demonstrated to me the depth of understanding of that.